And so, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing the relatively new Prime Video film, Midas Man. So, let's get into it, shall we? Midas Man, as what he said, is this relatively new Prime Video film all about Brian Epstein. It's essentially a Brian Epstein biopic. And if you don't know who Brian Epstein was, he was the manager for the Beatles, Cilla Black, Jerry and the Pacemakers, amongst many other bands during the early 1960s. And he was a big force in the music industry during that time as well. And I was interested in seeing this film for one big reason. Can you guess? I don't know if you'll be able to guess. And there's a bit of a clue with what I'm wearing for this podcast today. And that is, I'm a big Beatles fan, if you hadn't guessed already. If you hadn't listened to my previous podcast, because I've spoken at length about my Beatles love on this channel. I think I did like a 50-minute review of the Beatles anthology about a month or two ago now. I don't know how long ago that was, but the point I'm making is I've spoken about length on my love of the Beatles on this channel in the past. And because of my love of the Beatles, I am instantly interested in anything relating to them which comes out. And Brian Epstein, as I've already mentioned, was the manager for the Beatles. And even though I'm a big Beatles fan, I don't know much about Brian Epstein's life. I know bits and pieces here and there, like I knew when he died, but I didn't know how he met the Beatles, or I didn't know how he met the Beatles in great detail. I didn't know how he became their manager. I didn't know about his early music career, and so I was hoping to learn about that from watching this film. I was hoping that I was going to find this film informative. And I actually saw the film about a week ago now. Well, almost a week ago now, yeah. And I haven't reviewed it yet because I wanted to sit on it. Because I had some mixed feelings after watching this film. And now, after about a week ago from seeing it, I think I can finally pinpoint how I really felt about the film. And the Google plot synopsis of the film goes as follows. In 1960s Liverpool, Brian Epstein encounters a rock band that would take the world by storm. And that's pretty much all you need to know about this film before seeing it. As I've already said, I'm a big Beatles fan, so I was very excited about seeing this. Not a day goes by where I don't listen to a piece of Beatles music. Just this morning, I was listening to A Day in the Life, which is one of the most hauntingly beautiful songs ever made, in my opinion. I was listening to Noah Man after that, and then I was listening to Yellow Submarine. Not a day goes by when I don't listen to Beatles music. So I was excited about seeing this. I was excited about learning more about, Brian Epstein's life, because he was the manager for the Beatles, and also learning about how he managed other artists and other bands during that time. And after seeing the film about a week ago now, here are my thoughts on it. I thought this film was okay. I didn't think it was bad, not at all. But the thing is, and this is going to make me sound egotistical, but it's not meant to. The thing is, it feels like the sort of film which I could make. That's the problem with it. It feels like a big budget student film, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it felt like it could have been a lot better, and I kind of wish it was. Because I feel there was a great story to be told there about this person who just knew exactly what people wanted from music, about this manager who managed the Beatles, who managed Cilla Black, who managed Jerry and the Pacemakers, and was, again, as I already said, big force in music during the early 1960s. But I don't feel his story got the telling it deserved with this film. Again, I don't think it's bad. There are definitely some entertaining moments in the film. There's things I learned in the movie which I didn't know before. For instance, I didn't know how he started his music career and how his parents were kind of against him going into music. I didn't know about how he encountered the Beatles in great detail. And I don't know how accurate the film is, by the way. I have seen some reports online that apparently the film is inaccurate to a certain degree. But let's say this film is pretty accurate. I didn't know a bunch about Brian Epstein's life before watching this film. And that was great to learn about, as I've already said. And there were some enjoyable parts, and I thought the casting worked pretty well. You know, Jacob Fortune Lloyd, who plays Brian Epstein, does a good job. I did think he was a little too handsome, because Brian Epstein, although he was a good-looking person, I don't think was terribly handsome. And I think the guy they got to play him was a little too handsome. He looked a bit like a posh boy, you know? And I would have preferred somebody maybe not so... I wonder what somebody else would have made of that part. I wonder if someone else would have played it better. Again, I think Jacob Fortune Lloyd, who plays him, does a good job. I just wouldn't say he did a great job. I didn't totally buy into him as Brian Epstein, and I did feel at times like he was playing Brian Epstein. I didn't feel like I was watching Brian Epstein, which is not what you want from a biopic. You want to feel like you're actually watching the real artist. You know, that's what the best biopics feel like. I wax poetic about Elvis all the time, but Elvis, which came out a couple of years ago, whenever I rewatched that film, and I've rewatched it about 5 times, I feel like I'm watching Elvis. I don't feel like I'm watching Austin Butler as Elvis. But in this movie, I did feel like I was watching, you know, Jacob Fortune Lloyd play Brian Epstein, and I wish that I didn't. But again, I don't think he was bad in the movie. I wonder what someone else would have made of that part. And I would like to see someone else play it in the future and see their take on it, because I think that could work better, but who knows. And I did think the ones playing the Beatles all were pretty good as well. I actually liked the casting for the Beatles in this film. I know there's been some pushback against it online, but I thought they looked enough alike. I thought they looked enough alike the real Beatles. Sure, some of the heights were wrong, but I can get past that. That doesn't really bother me. I understand why it can bother some people, but I didn't really care that John Lennon was a bit too small in this film, because again, as I already said, they looked enough alike the real life people that I actually, whenever the Beatles popped up in this movie, I smiled. And this film did make me smile in quite a few moments, and the Beatles maybe are used a bit too much in this film, but as a big Beatles fan, I didn't really care about that, and I did like the way they were used. And again, I had a good time watching this film. I didn't think it was bad. I want to reiterate that. But I think the film suffers because it never really gets under the skin of its main character. You don't really get to learn what makes Brian Epstein tick. And I wish that you did. And I also wish that the film had a bit more of an edge to it and an energy to it, because this is a person who managed the Beatles, you know, and you see him managing the Beatles and going to America and going around the world with the Beatles. Or you don't see it in great detail, but you do see him do that, go around the world with the Beatles in this film, but you don't necessarily feel the energy of that. You don't necessarily feel the energy of Beatlemania, and he was the manager for the Beatles, so it's a bit weird that you don't feel that. And I also found it a bit weird that I also think it would have worked better if there was an edge to it, because again, this is a manager who had a lot of troubles in his life. If you watch the film, you see that he went through a lot. And I think if there was an edge to the film, if there was like a gripping nature to this film, it would have worked better and been a more engaging watch. But I did feel the film was too long, and at times was unengaging to watch. And I also wonder whether the film would have worked better if it actually had Beatles songs in there. Like, the film, it's kind of clever in that it gets around the whole Beatles song use, because you do see the Beatles perform songs in this film, but they're all Beatles covers, if you follow me. Like, they're not Beatles original songs. So you see the Beatles in this film before Please Mr. Postman, you see them before Money, That's What I Want, but they're not Beatles original songs. They're covers that the Beatles did. Brilliant covers in my opinion, but they are covers. So they do get around the whole copyright issue, because it's a hell of a lot of money to license a Beatles song for a movie or TV show. It'd probably be most of their budget, if not all of the budget for this film, because this does feel like a relatively small budget movie. But at the same time, I do wonder what it would have been like if they were able to license, I don't know, 1 or 2 Beatles songs for this film. It would have made it that bit more heartfelt and feel that bit more authentic, and just make the film better. I did like that they used Beatles songs and kind of worked their way around it. But also, I think it might have been better, particularly towards the end of the film, if they used... I'm trying not to give anything away, but I'm going to give something away here. If they use All You Need Is Love when you see Brian Epstein in the recording booth, but when they're recording All You Need Is Love and it's going out to all these countries around the world, I think it might have worked if they put it there. But again, that's not a big thing. It just, I don't know. I felt that could have made it better. And the film, as I said before, it's not a bad watch. I liked it, particularly as a Beatles fan. And there were things I learned about Brian Epstein watching this film. But I do wish it was better, and I do wish it got under the skin of its lead character. And because it doesn't, I didn't feel as emotionally engaged in this film as I wanted to, and it didn't grab me in the way I wanted it to. You know, I wanted this film to be better, and I do feel that somewhere in the future there's a better place for Brian Epstein's story to be told, because I don't feel this film does his story justice personally. But I did still enjoy the film, and so all in all, I'm going to say that Midas Man, I'm going to say that I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'm giving it that rating because I did enjoy the film, but I'm not going to give it a 7 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10 because I didn't think it was a solid film. I did think it could have been better. And like I said, it did feel like a big budget student film. One thing I will say, though, which I haven't said yet, and this is one of the last things I'll say, is this film does do a good job at realising the period setting of the early 1960s. And like when you see Brian Epstein go into the cavern in this film, I believe he's actually in the cavern, which sounds more easy to do than it actually is. You know, it sounds easy to do than it actually is. So I will give the film credit for that, but I do still feel like it could have been and should have been so much better. There was something missing, and I think that something is it doesn't get under the skin of its lead character, which I know I've said twice, and well, actually, now I know I've said 3 times, but I do feel that that's what was missing for me. You know, there wasn't an edge, and an energy with this film, and I think there should have been, particularly for this story. But still, I enjoyed watching it, so there's that. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Midas Man is a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Midas Man, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. Almost lost track of the outro there. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.